As a descendant of the old aristocracy, Eula has so much to deal with. Fortunately, she defies the old customs and only takes in likings to the traditional etiquette from her clan. Especially when it comes to combat, she is full of elegance. Her beautiful attack combinations, a powerful nuke from her burst, a unique playstyle, and overall powerful physical DPS. As you can see, Eula shows so much strength where even her sneeze is enough for you to empty your wallet. Today I'll do my best to answer if Eula is worth your wallet or not. Alright, let's do this. Hey, what is going on, guys, and welcome back to another Genshin Impact video. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Eula's combat talents and kit. She may be beautiful both in design and in combat. Yeah, that's it. Now, before we get started with the video, make sure you guys hit that like button as well as subscribe to the channel for more of these type of content. And also don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you know when I upload my latest video or when I go live. Look, guys, I see y'all watching my stuff, but you ain't subscribed, so subscribe for free Eula stays. Alright, now let's jump into the video. Okay, so as you can see here for her stats, you notice her attack is pretty high. The crit ratio as well, 75% crit rate, 174% crit damage. It's pretty good. And then for the energy recharge, okay, that's the only thing I want to highlight in this part of her build. You do want energy recharge, but just unfortunately for my case, I just got lucky and I have not much energy recharge for her. But as you may have guessed though, the reason why I'm mentioning about energy recharge in the first place is she's going to need to use her burst pretty much consistently in every single rotation to output maximum DPS. Alright, so those are her stats. Now let's move on to her talents. Starting off with her normal attacks, which are usually for most characters it's irrelevant, but for Eula's case, it's not. She does a standard 5-hit physical damage, which is great because, well, she is a physical damage dealer. She does noticeably have faster claymore attack animations than most characters, which there is a reason for that. Eula's normal attacks involves maximizing her burst damage, which I'll go more into detail once we go into her burst. Now let's go into her damage multipliers. As you can see, this is a standard claymore damage multipliers, which is great because Eula is a physical damage dealer. Now let's move on to her elemental skill. This ability is where her utility comes in. Basically, there's two ways to use the skill. You have either the press or the hold. Her press will have her deal crowd damage and grant her what is called a Grimheart stack, which basically it increases Eula's resistance to interruption and defense. Now for the hold, Eula consumes all the stacks currently and deal AoE crowd damage. If the Grimheart stacks are consumed, opponents within your range will have their physical resistance and their crowd resistance decrease. As you can probably tell, it is very important to always have her skill available, and you may want to have two stacks nearly 100% of the time due to her A1 passive, which I'll of course be explaining later in this video. Here are the damage multipliers, which it really is not the biggest deal. Really, the only reason to be upgrading this in the first place is only to increase the physical res decrease, but when you keep on upgrading her talent levels, it only just level up by just 1%, so it's very minuscule and not the biggest deal in the world. Now onto her most important ability in her kit, Eula's Elemental Burst. This ability does kind of confuse a lot of new players, so I'm going to do my best to break this down simply as much as possible. Basically how it works is Eula does a slash of crowd damage to nearby opponents while summoning what is called a Lightfall Sword. This Lightfall Sword will increase Eula's resistance to interruption, which there is a reason for this. This Lightfall Sword will fall around Eula for 7 seconds, then detonates, dealing physical damage to nearby opponents once the duration ends or if she swaps off field. This is where her biggest source of damage comes from. Now the reason I mentioned the high resistance to interruption is part of her burst is that there is a stacking mechanism for her Lightfall Sword, so dealing normal attacks, elemental skill, and elemental burst damage to your opponents will basically charge the Lightfall Sword and grant her an energy stack. Obviously, the more you have, the more explosion damage you'll deal. These do add up really high, so it is important to have a consistent combo while trying to stack up in your burst. That's why you hear a lot of Eula mains emphasizing certain attack combos for maximizing her burst DPS. I'll go over a very simple and easy combo that I like to use later on in this video. For now, this is her whole rundown for her burst. Now onto her damage multipliers, where here's the base damage. What's mostly important is the Lightfall Sword base damage, which is the detonation damage at basically 0 stacks. But you can obviously add on to that with the more stacks you deal from normal attacks, elemental skill, and elemental burst. For example, let's just say your talent for her burst is at level 10. It'll add up to 148.2%, which is pretty ridiculous. Now let's just say, for example, you got 10 stacks till the duration ends. That's nearly 1500%, and those are just literally the stacks by itself. Don't forget to add in the base damage, and that will be your final detonation number. And what's even crazier is that this was just an example. I can show you guys a combination where you can achieve an higher combo consistently. Anyways, I think you guys can see where I'm going with this. This ability is ridiculously powerful, and I think it's still the strongest burst in the game. However, as insane as this may seem, this is kind of a gamble ability, which does have some downsides. Due to its powerful nature, there are lots of obstacles to overcome. First off, this ability here has limited range, especially since Eula is a Claymore user. She can sometimes miss her stacks, which is a massive DPS loss, or enemies can sometimes just happen to iframe/dodge on field, or you don't crit. Those are the common frustrations when it comes to Eula's burst. Somewhat solution to enemies dodging is swapping off earlier to deal quicker physical damage, which you may need to do sometimes, but if you get lucky while maxing on her burst damage, you will see big white numbers. Alright, so now moving on to her A1 passive, the Rolling Rhyme. If you have 2 stacks of Grimheart are consumed upon unleashing the holding mode of Icy Tide Vortex, that's her elemental skill, a Shattered Lightfall sword will be created that will explode immediately, dealing 50% of the basic physical damage dealt by the Lightfall sword created by the Glacial Illumination. So this here basically is a mini nuke from her burst when you consume 2 stacks while holding her skill, quite nice for her overall DPS. Now onto her A4 passive, the Wellspring of Warlust. When Glacial Illumination is cast, the cooldown of Icy Tide Vortex is reset and Eula gains 1 stack of Grimheart. So this is basically a great quality of life passive where making her combos more flexible. Free cooldown reset after burst plus 1 stack is always super helpful for her. And for her Exploration passive, it's one of those 10% chance of crafting double the talent books, always great to have. Alright, so those are the talents. Now for her talents priority, I would start off by leveling up her burst as much as you can. It should be one of the first talents to be focusing on your account. At least I will go from level 8 and higher. This is pretty much majority of Eula's damage and is very valuable, especially since her damage multipliers at base scale really high from her burst damage. Up next, I will just go for her normal attacks since she is going to be attacking a lot on field, and also she's a physical damage dealer. And I will go at level 7 and higher. And then for the skill, it's mainly to improve the resistance shred for physical, which is great, but does not contribute to increasing her personal damage. For this, I will go for, if you are in a budget, at level 6 and higher, although I would recommend level 7, but whatever works for you best. Overall, her talents are all pretty strong and does emphasize on stacking up more of her burst damage. Now we're going to try something different this time and go into her combinations. Alright, so here is the combination showcase, so let's get into it. Starting off, we got Rosary's ult, then swap to Mika, uses skill, then his burst, then Eula's skill, ult, 4 normal attacks, hold skill, and then do it again, and boom, much better. That is more like it. And that is the most consistent combo that you can do with Eula. Alright, so starting off with the first constellation called the Tidal Illusion. So every time in Ice Tide's Vortex, Grimheart stacks are consumed, Eula's physical damage is increased by 30% for 6 seconds. Each stack consumed will increase the duration of this effect by 6 seconds up to a maximum of 18 seconds. Great constellation that just straight up gives you a 30% physical damage bonus with an achievable maximum uptime. Always great to have. Up next, we got C2, the Lady of Sea Foam. Decreases the cooldown of Icy Tide Vortex holding mode, rendering it identical to press cooldown. A minor quality of life due to having more access to spamming hold for her skill. Situationally can be useful, but most of the times not needed. And then C3, Lauren's Pedigree. It's basically 3 levels up to her burst, which is actually pretty impactful for more burst damage. Then we got C4, the obstinacy of one's inferiors. Lightfall swords deal 25% of increased damage against opponents with less than 50% HP. Once again, another situational constellation, especially with the whole 50% or less HP requirement. It'll be inconsistent, which makes this not practical for combat. Then we got her C5, Chivalry Quality, which is basically 3 levels up to her elemental skill, which is okay. And finally, her big one, her C6, Noble Obligation. Lightfall swords created by Glacial Illumination, elemental burst, start with 5 stacks of energy. Normal attacks, elemental skills, and elemental bursts have a 50% chance to grant the Lightfall sword an additional stack of energy. This constellation is where Eula becomes a completely different unit. She goes from a ticking bomb to a powerful nuke. This constellation basically gives 5 stacks for free, plus another additional stack with a 50% chance of granting. So if you get lucky, nearly almost all your hits will be doubled. So let's just say in average you reach 13 stacks normally. This constellation gives 5 more plus, potentially double, which at max would be 31. That is a massive power boost, an insane buff. But then again, RNG does play into this, so obviously you won't be able to reach that. But most of the times at pre-C6, you won't go anything higher than 13 unless for some reason you have a ton of attack speed. Even if you get unlucky with all those hits, you'll still get 5 for free, which is a lot, but unlikely to miss out on every single stack. Whole point is this Constellation basically turns Eula into an actual nuke or a powerful quickstopper, which is actually very convenient in combat. Overall, Constellations are strong, well, mainly her C6. Some other ones are negligible, but is it worth to pull for? Nope, definitely not. Eula at base is still arguably has one of the strongest bursts in the game, and only Constellation that really changes her is at C6, which is only available towards whales, or I guess if you're a free-to-play willing to wait for every rerun, which I respect if you do. Other than that, the same thing as the characters I talk about, she doesn't need it. C0 is already pretty good. Now let's move on to her artifacts. And starting with the sets, basically her best in slot is the 4-piece Pale Flame, pretty much designed for her with the bonus attack and the physical damage bonus. Another alternative 4-piece set is 4-piece Emblem, not her best in slot, but viable due to Eula needing ER. It's actually a pretty decent option to use on her. However, I personally wouldn't use this on her since there are a lot more other characters that has Emblem as their best in slot. So I would save this set for them instead. For the 2-piece combinations, her best ones will be 2 times of 2-piece physical damage bonus. What's great about this is that even this combination can even outperform 4-piece Pale Flame if with better substats. Only difference is you're missing out extra 80% attack, which you can always get from substats / external buffs. If you don't have this combo, then I would still recommend to have the 2-piece physical damage bonus and either of 2-piece attack or 2-piece ER. Both varies depending on what you need more of. Now moving on to the main stats, starting with the Sands, you can either go for attack percent or ER. Attack for more damage and ER if you need to fulfill your ER requirements. For her ER requirements by herself, it will be 180 to 200%. Spending that much on ER is impractical for damage potential. So I would recommend to go for team consisting double cryo, then it would be 140 to 160%. If you're running triple cryo, then 120 to 130%. Running Raiden / Favonius weapons or both does help a lot for her ER requirements. If with everything I mentioned like triple cryo plus Raiden plus Favonius weapons, then you can pretty much run 100 through 150%, which would be great, but most won't have all of this. Now that's for her ER requirements. As for a goblet, it'll be physical damage bonus pretty much 99% of the time, unless you want to do a cryo meme build, which she doesn't have much source of outputting cryo damage anyway, but I guess you can do that. Attack is the last thing you want. And for the circlet, you can either go for crit rate and crit damage, pick whatever you need more of. And oh yeah, please don't build for crit fishing. For those who doesn't know what that is, basically it's just when you stack up as much crit damage on your stats and keep on playing until you cast your burst and hoping you crit. Unless you don't, then you keep on resetting the chambers. This is generally not recommended. Even the Abyss, very unreliable plus time consuming due to lower crit rate. Just stick with the general 1-to-2 crit ratio. Alright, and those are her artifacts. Now let's move on to her weapons. Like the usual DPS builds, I would recommend to have anything with crit or attack or ER if needed. All the weapons I mentioned in this video are the ones in my opinion that benefits Eula the most. So starting off with the 3-star weapons. Let me see if I still have it. Oh, it looks like I don't. Oh, I still have it. Okay, here we go. We have the Skyrider Greatsword, which are mainly for the newer players. I would only recommend the Skyrider Greatsword, which from what I heard is actually a solid option for her. Apparently, it can even keep up with a free 4-star craftable weapon, the Snow Tomb, which is pretty impressive for a DPS. Not bad, but still a temporary weapon until you can obtain a better one. Now to 4 stars, which luckily for Eula, she got tons of options. Starting with the free-to-play options, the best one currently in my opinion is the Luxurious Sea Lord. Obviously the best claymore design in the game, which makes this by far Eula's strongest weapon. Good attack stats, and passive fits very well with her. Additional burst damage buff and extra on-hit AoE damage is a very high value claymore for free-to-plays. However, this weapon is event exclusive and was only obtainable from version 2.1 event, which, damn. That long already? For an alternative option I mentioned earlier is the Snow Tomb Star Silver, which does have physical damage bonus. Quite uncommon to have a specific elemental damage bonus as a substat like her 5-star signature weapon. Other than that, the passive is aight, but that's great because that means you don't need refinements for this weapon. Overall, it's a solid option for her. For the battle pass, I mean, there's only one claymore that you can use, which is Serpent Spine, which is still one of her strongest options. With more refinements, can even outperform some 5 stars. Pretty ridiculous claymore. For the gacha, I will go for the Akomora, which has lots of potential but heavily depends on your team's ER. I recommend to use it with high ER cost characters like Raiden, Diona, Rosaria, Mika, etc. Also, more refinements, the better. Pretty strong option for her unless with low ER cost for your characters. Analytic Blade is solid, provides attack and crit rate, but you need most of your characters to be from leeway to gain value out of this, which for Eula, most of her best supports unfortunately does come from Mondstadt, so you may need to optimize your team just for Lithic Blade to be worth using. Otherwise, it's an alright weapon. Now onto the 5-star weapons, starting off with the limited weapons. Obviously, our best in slot is her signature weapon, Song of Broken Pines. It gives everything Eula needs, which is attack, physical damage bonus, and attack speed. However, she doesn't need it due to tons of other 5-star options that she has. Up next, I will go for the Beacon of Red Sea, which is a powerful option for her. It's as straightforward as it is. High crit rate and attack subsets, plus more additional attack percent from the passive. Easy passive to trigger, plus she really values crit rate. Then the Red Hornstone Thresher, which honestly is only used as a crit stat stick. It has a low base attack, so you are required to have an attack buffer like Bennett to make up for the attack loss. Then the Unforged, which is an attack stat stick, but needs a shielder on your team to increase more value from the passive. Now for the permanent weapons, I will go for the Wolf's Gravestone. Powerful attack stat stick, plus passive can buff your team situationally, which is always great to have. Sometimes can even out DPS Song of Broken Pines if you can trigger its full passive. It's inconsistent due to the less than 30% HP condition for your opponents. Most of the times you won't be able to get it, but still a powerful option for her. And then I will go for Skyward Pride, which is kind of an underrated option in my opinion. Has good base attack and ER. Since she needs ER, her ER requirements lowers, which helps to focus more on building offensive stats. Also, passive works decently well with her. And those are her weapons. Now let's move on to her team composition. For Eula, she has only one team comp, which is Physical Hyper Carry. I'm mainly going to be talking about her best teammates that works very well with Eula. Okay, so the main core you need for this team is an Electro and another Cryo character. Electro for the Superconduct reaction, and another Cryo for battering Eula, and Cryo Resonance. Now, let's start off with the Electro options. One of her strongest teammates is going to be Raiden. Her off-field Electro application is pretty much infinite, plus can follow around Eula to reapply Electro, and it's also long-term. She can buff your overall team's burst damage and is a widespread battery. Overall, insane teammate, but major downside like most OP support slash sub DPS is that Raiden is so strong, you might want to use her elsewhere for a different team comp like Hyper Carry slash Hyper Bloom. If not, then I would highly recommend to use her with Eula. If you don't have her or she is in a different team comp, then my next option I would recommend is to use Fischl. We all know how good she is by now. Fischl also has a consistent Electro application off field, plus she can dish out more overall skill damage than Raiden. But you may need to relocate her odds to reapply Electro to certain enemies that, just spawn in different locations, like for example Spiral Abyss. Also a decent battery for Eula. Fischl is a pretty great option. Up next I will go with Beidou. She works decently well, but you may need another Electro character to use Beidou's burst consistently and to also battery Beidou herself, but great for AoE situations. Up next I will go with Cookie Shinobu, who is mainly used as an off-field Electro applier slash healer. Dory is a solid option. She also heals and provides flat energy, which can be helpful for Eula, of course. And in my opinion, the underrated option would be Lisa. She's one of the starting free characters to obtain. And as a Catalyst user, this is in my opinion one of the strongest pros for anybody that is a Catalyst user. She can run Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayers and have defense shred from her burst. Again, same thing as Beidou. You may need another Electro character to battery Lisa. Again, same thing as Beidou. You may need another Electro character to battery Lisa. Alright, and those are the best Electro characters that I can think of. Now on to the Cryo options. Oh yeah, I can just filter and select it by certain elements, so we can just go by it individually, which is so much easier. Now onto Cryo, there aren't too many options, but most of Eula's best ones are 4 stars, which is great for free-to-plays. So now starting off with her technical best support, which is Mika. He buffs physical damage bonus, AoE healing, attack speed, and with C6, crit damage. Mika's pretty much designed for Eula, but isn't necessarily the only support that you need for Eula, and obviously he's not a must-need for Eula as well. He has his own issues like poor energy regeneration, and even pre-C6, I would say he's an okay-ish support for Eula, and probably you would prefer some other better cryo units that would just, benefit more for Eula. Still an option for her. Now for the offensive option, I would say Rosaria, especially at C6, benefits a ton for Eula. The crit rate buffs, decent battery, and physical debuffs from her C6. Another option I would go for is Shenhe, which is basically the same thing as Rosaria without the crit rate buffs, plus additional crowd damage enhancement, which is surprisingly decent for Eula. Only thing is that Shenhe is a crowd buffer, which in my opinion she would be the last choice unless you don't need / have a crowd DPS on your other team for Spiral Abyss. Now for the defensive options, Layla is a recent one, plus you can get her currently as of right now from the version 3.8 event for free. She's a solid crowd shielder with decent application and damage. Next I will go with Diona. She generates a ton of particles, which is extremely valuable for Eula, plus the extra healing. Her shield isn't as strong as Layla, but still is a count factor. And those were the crowd characters. Now onto the flex. As always for literally almost any team, Zhongli being one of the best. He has the strongest shield in the game, plus universal resistance shred. Overall great character to have. Another option I would go for is Bennett. He's another option with, of course, the attack buffing / healing. Great thing about this, though, is that Bennett isn't needed sometimes for Eula since she has a lot of other opportunities to gain external attack buffs. Plus, sometimes, depending on rotations, you may lose out on Bennett's attack buff due to his duration being shorter than Eula. Other than that, still a great teammate to use. If you're in case where you need an extra of either Electro / Crowd, then slot in whichever role you need more of. Like if you're running an offensive Electro sub DPS like Fischl, then I will go for either a defensive Electro character like someone like Cookie Shinobu or having another defensive Crowd character. This is all varies based on what you need on your account. And that was the team composition for Eula. I'm going to be mainly showcasing this team and one more for Eula. Now let's move on to the showcase. Here we go. So I usually start off with Rosaria here. And then Mika. Eula. Four normal attacks. Hold E. Oh, that was too early. But you know what? It works. And right into the funnel energy. As you can see.
Neutralizing threat. You can't run. Lights out. Beg for mercy.
If I had like a little bit more ER on Eula, this would be like almost 100% rotation at the time. But yeah, as you can see, I am struggling a bit for ER uptime for Eula here. Alright, so this Abyss is not necessarily the greatest for Eula's team here, but same idea works. Apply Rosaria's ult. Here we go. Then already start. Here we go. So most people would have this team available. Luckily, we got the Wolf's Gravestones buff. Here we go. Have to stay in place. Is it enough energy? Oh, there you go. We can do a rotation again. Ah! This is the problem with Eula's thing, but sometimes, as you can see, you know, if you can manage to like get it fully maximized, especially if she's very good against a tanky unit, then, you know, it's helpful. But other than that, sometimes she does struggle against that, unfortunately. So you do have to like know when to use Eula's ult, especially if you have like limited ER like me. There we go.
Stabilize. There is no escape. Yeah. Shudder. Light. Crush.
Okay, I got the Wolf's Gravestones buff.
Will be mine.
Let's see if this is enough.
Eye for an eye. More speed.
Okay, yeah, 249k, pretty good. Wow, I missed that Zhongli meatball. That was pretty unsatisfying. And that is everything you need to know about Eula. Now, like usual, let's get on to her pros and cons. Starting with the pros, she's by far the current strongest physical DPS in the game, and it's not even close. She can dish out a lot of damage within seconds, which is great for time content like Spiral Abyss. She has access to Crowd Resonance, which being one of the most useful in the game. She has self-physical resistance shred, which for certain enemies that has high physical resistance, it does help a lot for Eula. She has a lot of 4-star options that are strong and, you know, works very well with her teams, which some are free-to-play friendly. Her teams are cheap to build, just mainly focus on what she needs. And finally, she's, in my opinion, one of the most fun characters to play, especially when you master her attack combo, you'll have a satisfactory experience. Plus extra bonus, probably the best normal attack animations in the game. Alright, now moving on to her cons. She does need high investments to her build to be competitive with the current meta. Can be difficult to play, especially on mobile, depending on the situation. This falls onto the same answer before, but she has high risk reward playstyle, which means dishing out her maximized DPS can be inconsistent. Like I mentioned before, you have 3 things to worry about her burst, which can be missing on your burst, not critting, and messing up your attack combination. She has energy issues, she has poor self-energy regen, and even worse, her burst cannot be pre-funneled, meaning casting her skill, then her burst will not give her leftover energy. Some of her best teammates have a weaker role and prefers other teams instead. She is a physical DPS, which arguably physical damage is the worst damage type in the game due to limited damage ceiling and support characters. As you can see, Eula has a lot of strengths / weaknesses, but depending on what's most important to you will determine whether to pull for her or not. Now, speaking of which, going back to the question of this video, is Eula worth your wallet? Unfortunately, as of right now, I would say no, just mainly because she is put in the awkward spot right before the upcoming region, Fontaine, featuring new characters. Also, she isn't as highly as metas before, but still can get the job done. If of course you already considered to pull for her for whatever reasons, then she is the best coverage for physical damage. Also, she has one of the best designs in the game. Well, that's gonna do it for this video, so if you guys enjoyed it, make sure you guys hit that like button, as well as subscribe to the channel for more of this type of content. Also, please don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you know when I upload my latest video or when I go live on my live streams. And that is all I got. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, stay epic and... peace out.